Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. It's nice to see a full house. That's always both daunting and exciting in the same breath. So, starting with our activities over the last few months. Main recent releases, software-wise, have mostly been just a lot of minor upgrades of things. We did a new Fireworks Pro in October, version 2.20. And if you're an existing Fireworks owner, you can upgrade to the latest CD for a £5. There have been sort of minor upgrades to NetFetch and SafeStore and a variety of other things over the last few months. So by all means, if you are wanting to replace your discs and things at the show, come and see. But that hasn't really been our focus in the last few months because we've been very, very busy on the hardware front as usual. At the moment, we've got essentially 3 streams of machines that we're running. There's the RISC book range. And last October, we launched a brand new member of that family, the so-called RISC book Go, which you can see I have an example of here. We actually do 2 variants now of this because it's been so popular. We started with one which could fold. So the screen was attached to the base. It folded around so that you could use it sort of flipped over as a tablet or flipped up as a laptop. But we also do this variant where, if I'm gentle with it, it completely comes apart and it's not broken. And then we can put that nicely back again and we're back to being a laptop again. Now when you're running RISC OS on it, you would naturally want to have the keyboard and touchpad aspect because RISC OS really needs mouse, keyboard type input. That's what it's good at. But you also have the other side of the system, and then you can use it as a tablet, and that works with the touch pretty well. I still personally prefer to use it in laptop mode almost exclusively because I'm a bit traditional like that really. I like a mouse, I like a keyboard. I can type on a keyboard, it just feels right. But the point is you've got one flexible device that does it all. As you can see from me just kind of flopping it around in my hands, I'm not a strong person, but I have no problem sort of carrying this around all day. You've got long battery life, so I mean they rate up to sort of 10, 11, 12 hours of battery life. Probably practical battery life's a bit lower than that, but certainly there's enough battery to sort of do a whole day at an exhibition, which is quite good going. We had it running RISC OS all day at an exhibition, which is usually drains the battery of an ordinary laptop. And you get sort of modern connections like USB 3, modern sort of wireless AC, video connections via HDMI, and all the gubbins that you would expect on a modern system at a low price in a very small, compact form factor. And it's still big enough that you can read the text and interact with it. It's not like sort of trying to do a diddly little thing. So it's a very practical, affordable solution, and that's been proven to be very successful. To be honest with you, I was a little bit surprised because I didn't know how people were going to react to it. But as I say, it's been a bit of a sort of surprise hit, as it were. So that's the RISC book Go, available in 2 styles. And companion RISC Cube products are also evolving with new processors and things which are proving really fast and good. But of course, a lot of the focus is on the ARMX6 and the Time Machine pure ARM machines. And of course, we're continuing to invest and develop those systems. So February saw the release of what we call TurboLAN high-speed networking upgrade for the ARMX6. That was pretty exciting because it boosted the network performance way up. We saw networking speeds of in excess of 30 megabytes a second over a network link. Now, for RISC OS, that is remarkably fast. If you think that the RISC PC's hard disk run at 2 megabytes a second, we're seeing 30 megabytes a second over a network link. And that's not using high-end expensive equipment, that's using a standard gigabit network switch. And yes, it was using quite a nice network attached storage, but this is not something that is wildly expensive. We're talking sort of a couple of £100 type equipment, £300 network storage. So when it's not mind-blowingly expensive equipment, seeing very, very high performance on that through RISC OS. And of course that makes doing anything relating to networking so much more pleasant and also much smoother, which is very nice because there are some things that can be decidedly lumpy. For example, if you're networking with virtual Acorn is a typical one. That can be really lumpy because virtual Acorn networking is always a bit of a... it works, but it can be lumpy, I think is the best way to describe it. With the new Turbo Land driver, we get very smooth transfers to and from the virtual Acorn system. So I have a virtual Acorn system on one wall and the ARMX6 on the other, and I'm chucking around a couple of 100 meg files. Not a problem. So that was quite an exciting upgrade for the ARMX6. And we also released a new operating system upgrade, which introduced things like disk partitioning. So you can now have much larger hard drives available on RISC OS and partition them up into chunks, so that you can put in more or less any terabyte drive and knock it into 4 256 lumps and use it right now with shipping ROMs. You don't need to buy special drives or anything. Boom, there it is. Off you go. The other thing that we did to sort of, if you like, match that is introduce a new a RAID solution for RISC OS. So what this does is, for those unfamiliar with RAID, the most common use of RAID these days is what's called RAID mirroring. There are all sorts of different versions of RAID, but for the purposes of this talk and what people are likely to be doing, mirroring is the one. Mirroring basically allows you to use several physical hard drives as a single physical drive, with the idea that when you write data to the one drive, it in fact gets written to both drives. And that way, if one drive fails, your data is safe. And in a world where we're now sort of dealing with terabytes of data, the fact is that a drive failure, well, at any point, but particularly now given the size of individual drives, is a pretty scary prospect. That if you have a single drive and you put all your eggs into that basket, and that drive dies, splat, that's a lot of data down the swanny. So the RAID solution allows you to have two drives. In this particular case, you could have more, presented as a single drive. The ones we've got on the stand are 1 terabyte, pair of 1 terabyte drives that you can access directly from your RISC OS system. Protects you against any kind of failure of the drive, and the way we've done them, they can actually be connected to a RISC OS machine, connected to a Windows machine, connected to a Mac, whatever you fancy. So you've got a level of data security between systems as well with that solution, and that's very affordable. I mean, the sort of deal we're offering is essentially that if you pay for the two drives, you get the rest of it for free. So that's quite an attractive package for data security, and that obviously works hand in hand with the partitioning. Because if you want to partition those purely for RISC OS, you can do that with the partitioning of the ARMX6. We've also been enhancing the time machine system that uses the titanium board with additional drive options, ROM upgrades and software upgrades, and we've also done a new version of our graphical Linux for Titanium, which can be bundled with the time machine system, so that you can have Linux and RISC OS on the same computer. That solution now features more software, latest versions, better graphics, more applications, better network. Suffice to say, lots of across the board improvements to the graphical Linux, and we have those available to show as well. So developments on all fronts on the hardware that we're offering. You'll be able to try all of the computers that we offer on the stand. We have examples of pretty much everything. But by all means, come and grab me and talk to me either about the software or about the hardware. I'm more than happy to talk, although it does tend to get a bit quite the queues sometimes get a bit long. But do be patient, and I'll get to you in the end. Now, obviously, while we've been doing all of this work, one of the big challenges is moving everything on to support, from a software perspective, to support the hardware that we're developing. And this is sort of how I'm going to segue into talking about RISC OS Developments, because RISC OS Developments was born out of Richard Brown and myself talking about how to tackle the big problems within RISC OS. All those problems where you sit down and say, wouldn't it be great if RISC OS could do And then you think, well, we can't do that because we can't afford to. So what Richard and I talked about was what can we do to make that problem go away? And the answer that we came up with was that if we pooled our own resources into one big company and also looked for investment outside both outside the RISC OS world and poured everything, both of ourselves and the outside, into a pod, then we could actually look and try and tackle the big issues. And so that's ultimately what your purchases of our RISC OS computers and our RISC OS software are now going into. So when I stood up at previous exhibitions, and I stood up and I said, when you buy our machines, you're supporting the RISC OS scene, and you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, I can't say that. They're going out to the Audi dealer and buying a new big car. No, I drive a Skoda. And I very much like my sodas. And I eat cheese toasties. So no wine and caviar. What this is doing is pouring the money that we get in, minus the cost of a cheese toastie or two, back into the RISC OS scene. And using those resources to allow us to employ programmers, to get work done, allow programmers to be paid properly as we try to do anyway, but to actually tackle the big issues. 20 years ago, roughly speaking, when Acorn packed up, I stood in front of an audience much like this down in Cambridge. It was all developers, but quite a few of the faces in here are developers too, so that'll do. And I preached about the need to separate RISC OS from Acorn, because not forget Phoebe, but Phoebe was one thing, but preserving RISC OS was the important thing, because without RISC OS there couldn't be any other RISC OS hardware that ran RISC OS. And I said, look, we've got to save RISC OS from Acorn, because otherwise we won't have a scene in 10 to 20 years' time. That led to RISC OS Limited, which had its successes and its failures, and that led to Castle and to RISC OS Open and so on. This RISC OS Developments is 20 years later saying, how can we have RISC OS in another 20 years? And our feeling is that only by tackling the big issues can we guarantee that there will be a future for the platform. And that's what we're trying to do here. So when you buy your software, when you buy your RISC, whether you buy your ARM-X6 or a Time Machine or whatever if you just want to buy a copy of Fireworks, you're now able, that is going to be going directly back into the development of the platform going forwards. As I say, I'm sure Richard has told you more about the plans there, so I won't go into the details. But there are basically 3 pillars to the project.
He said Andrew will tell us everything.
Oh, did he? Oh, well. there are 3 pillars to the project. There's one main goal, and then there are 2 supporting pillars involved that without which the main goal cannot be achieved. The main goal will probably be of interest to all of you. The supporting aspects will definitely be of interest, because without those supporting aspects, RISC OS doesn't move forward. So it's a 3-pronged attack to make RISC OS into the future, and that means involving all of the people who are at this show today. This is not a divide and conquer type thing. This is a supporting RISC OS Open. This is a supporting CGA. This is supporting Archon. This is supporting Office. This is supporting ident computer. This is supporting RISC OS Cinenomine. Everybody around the hall, RISC OS Developments is for everybody. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme or anything like that. It's about ensuring that RISC OS is where it needs to be going forward, so that we can bring new blood in, so that we can get forwards, and that RISC OS sort of continues into the future. And so that's, needless to say, taken a fair bit of time recently to get off the ground, and I've spent an awful lot of time talking to people on the phone and driving around and organising stuff. Richard's doing the front side of things in terms of talking to people with investment side of things. I'm looking after the organisation of the technical side of things, much as I have done in the past. And we look forward to moving things forward is the key. We have big plans. The reason for not being too explicit about the big plans is because if we say we're going to do X and there are bumps along the road, you'll hold us accountable at this stage, and we don't want to get hopes up and then dash them. On the flip side, the one thing we do know is that the money that we're putting in, we will see returns from because we have to see returns from, and therefore you will be seeing benefits over the next 6 to 12 months. Right, okay, so instead of going on and on, I'm going to stop there and open it up to questions. So feel free to ask any questions you like about what we're doing with RCOM. If you want to know about RISC OS Developments, you're probably going to get a bit of a veiled answer, but I'll do what I can to answer anything that you may want to know.
What are the big problems that RISC OS needs to tackle?
That's a real question.
Well, I mean, I think if you sit down and have a think to yourself about what software and hardware challenges we're facing on the software front, there are very specific things that RISC OS struggles with. On the hardware front, in order to support big projects going forwards, there are things that need to be supported within RISC OS and within the hardware that we already have available. And if we want to attract new blood, we need to have systems that do, where all of the hardware works and works well, and works as well as other alternatives. And that's the goal for the future. So you want somebody who comes in to take a look at RISC OS, and rather than saying, "Ew, that doesn't do," you want them to say, "Oh, let me look deeper at RISC OS." And we need to be growing the user base, and we need to be in the right place going forward. I mean, things like the Pi RC15 that RISC OS Open have put out is a brilliant starting point in terms of at least we now have a version that will work on more or less any Pi for the new blood. But of course, that's just that gets you in the door. We need to be in a position where they try Raspberry and they try RISC OS, and the experience makes them not just flip over to the Raspberry with a stick there, but that they stay and want to spend time with RISC OS.
Right. You mentioned about RAID. It seems to me that you only mentioned a pair of drives, each of 1 terabyte, both containing the same data. So that means that the backup system or whatever is basically only able to take 1 terabyte of data. So is it possible to add more than just?
I mean, there are different ways of tackling this. You could have more larger disks in there. The reason for choosing 1 terabyte drives is primarily one of price. That not many people want to pay for a pair of 2 terabyte drives, bearing in mind that post-Brexit 2 terabyte drives are, well, best part of £100+ each, and you multiply that up and it's a fair chunk of change. So if I'm going to have them to show you, there's no reason I couldn't build you one with a pair of 2 terabyte drives, but if I'm bringing them to sale, for most RISC OS folks, 1 terabyte is a fair amount of storage. But I will say that there are also other arguments that say if you want more storage than that, you are better looking at something like network attached storage, bearing in mind what I was talking about network performance. Because network storage devices also use RAID, but there it's very easy to go for 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 disk RAID, and go for sort of many terabytes. I mean, you don't want to know how many terabytes I've got in the home unit at the moment. But that's I would suggest that if your data is so big that you're sort of saying, well, 1 terabyte of storage is not enough for all the data I have, then you probably would be better served by network storage, simply because although you can move the RAID solution between different computers by connecting things, network storage is available instantaneously to all the computers that you own. And generally speaking, if you need such huge amounts of data space, pooling it like that so that it's shared between all your computers tends to make more sense than just having a big, giant, ridiculously sized pool on a single computer. Or at least to me it does anyway.
Right, and finally, the drives that you're talking about, are they the little tiny pocket things that drop into your pocket like USB?
In the particular solutions that we're selling, we use specially dedicated RAID drives, which are not designed as pocket-sized drives. They are proper drives. Drives are often these days tend to be sold for different purposes. It's certainly to a degree marketing, but there is a volunteer element to it. And also how they handle errors is subtly different. With RAID, there are specific timeouts involved, and drives need to respond within certain time frames in case of errors in order for the RAID controller to understand and handle things properly. And they suddenly change the error timings on different types of drive. So if you want to do RAID properly, you use drives that are designed for use in RAID arrays. You don't use sort of power saver drives. So we only use what we regard to be the proper drives. There is a price premium, unfortunately, with those, and they cost about £10–15 more than an ordinary drive. But to my mind, you do something. If you're going to do it, you do it properly. You don't muck around. I know that there are the odd RAID drive that are the smaller drives. You can buy those, but again, I think if you're going to sort of do that, there's a reason why people use full-size drives. They are a little bit faster as well. So I tend to prefer to think that.
Can I ask how you see RISC OS Developments playing alongside the ROOL bounty scheme, particularly so you don't end up competing for the same sources of finance and talent?
That's a fair comment. That's a difficult one to answer in terms of politics because I mean the ROOL bounty system has yielded some good results, but the pots that are available for things are not representative, or haven't reached the representative sizes of the amount of work involved. So I was looking at some of the sort of complex bounties only last week, sometime, it was probably Tuesday, and you were talking about bounty pots of maybe £1,000–2,000. In the nicest possible way, that's not enough to pay a programmer to do a major piece of programming work. So
to encourage a volunteer, but not a professional.
That's it. So I think where RISC OS Developments comes in is the fact that we are funded, thanks to the combination of Richard and I's resources and what we've had invested from elsewhere, we're in a position to actually pay programmers properly to do work. Obviously, that's not a sort of infinite open checkbook. I mean, it's a dangerous thing to say when we talk. But on the other hand, you know, if we just do things willy-nilly, then that's how you blow through money very, very quickly. One thing throughout my business career, I've been very cautious about things, possibly too cautious, some would say, but it does mean I'm still here talking to you. So I expect to apply the same fiscal caution to RISC OS Developments as well. But on the other hand, you know, knowing that you aren't limited to just spending £1,000 on a project does make things much more practical. But the other part of the question is competing for the same programming resources. That is a big problem because there is only a limited amount of programming expertise within the RISC OS community. And one of the things we have been discussing is possibly looking at some of the skilled people of the past who are still floating around the edges, but perhaps who don't contribute anymore because they don't think the RISC OS matters anymore. And maybe we can sort of renew their interest because of what, you know, a combination of seeing what's happening in terms of RISC OS is really moving forwards massively compared to what was happening 10, 15, 20 years ago, coupled with actual investment in the platform, may unlock doors that were previously closed.
So do you see the bounties as a way for fixing specific issues, whereas RISC OS Development for bigger end projects?
You could look at it like that. I mean, as I say, you're asking political questions, and I don't want to make judgments on another company's products and schemes. Sorry, it's very difficult. I mean, the bounty system exists for what it does, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who wishes those bounties would get filled faster. Anybody have any other questions at the back there?
Will the results of this be available only to Arcom's customers, or will they go into the RISC OS open source stream, or what?
We don't see this as a money-making exercise. By which I mean that this is for the benefit of everybody, not the benefit of Arcom customers. So yes, we would expect the results to go into the ROOL source tree. Just as, for point of reference, all of the ARMX6 work is in the ROOL source tree, which is more than compared to some of the other platforms, unfortunately. You know, we have fulfilled our requirement to return all of the work that we do and continue to return the work that we do back into the source tree, and that would be same policy on this. We don't see this as I say, this is not, the only way in which this is a money-making exercise for Arcon is by virtue of the fact that I still want to be in business in 20 years' time.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Now, I will flip that round and say the best way that that can happen is if people support Arcon products, be it software or be it hardware, because if I don't have to worry about getting my keys toasties, then that's more time I can spend on other things. But on the flip side, I don't want that to be taken as holding anything back. That is not the intention of this product. RISC OS Developments is not that is not to say that we might not have some chargeable products at some point, but the primary exercise of this, the primary goal of this exercise is not for RISC OS Developments to be a money-making thing. It's a making RISC OS better thing, and it's a way of pooling resources to make things better. So, I know that doesn't make a lot of sense in modern, every cent matters Great Britain, but that you don't stay within this community. There's got to be this sort of, if you like, circular rolling system where everybody's helping everybody else, because otherwise there is no RISC OS in 20 years. And as I say, that's why we're doing this, is for the future of the system, not to get rich quick, if you know what I mean. Quite the opposite. Anybody else have any questions?
Question about the money side of it. I can see putting in £1,000 or £2,000 and getting no money back is fine. But is there any encouragement putting in, say, 10 or 20 or 30 or 40,000? It's not, you're getting nothing back from that. So is there no mechanism for any of the money coming back here?
I think you need to talk to Richard about that rather than me. We are, at the moment, we are not looking at it in those terms. And certainly we would not be asking people to invest. I think the important thing to take away is the project as originally envisaged is now funded, or we wouldn't be talking about it. So, if in a way the question is invalid because we're not asking you to spend money and not get anything to like.
I'm just trying to clarify this all. The balance scheme is quite clear. You put in £500 into the balance sheet and you get a better RISC OS out.
Yeah. Well, obviously, anybody who invests will be given a lot more information than what I'm giving you now.
Right.
So that's the first thing, and that's between you and Richard to sort out, I would suggest. And secondly, just as with the bounties, you'll be getting things out of it in terms of all the things that happen as a result of it. As I say, this is not a case of just lining Arcon's pockets or lining or only benefiting Arcon customers. Quite the opposite. This is about everybody and everybody benefiting from the work that gets done. But equally, the only way you tackle big things is by pooling resources to make something that's like. As I say, I'll go back to something like RISC OS Limited. Okay, RISC OS Limited perhaps leaves a slightly bitter taste in some people's mouths because of how things ended. But in terms of what it achieved, in terms of extracting RISC OS from Acorn and then delivering RISC OS 4 and then providing a basis on which companies like Castle could then build with the Ionics and so on and so forth, I think the company was very successful in terms of there being a RISC OS scene now. That progression of events of extracting RISC OS from Acorn so that we could break from the Acorn past as Acorn imploded, separate the operating system out, work with hardware manufacturers, then ultimately there was the transition to Castle and then to RISC OS Open Limited. Those things have taken money in the past, and this is a project to allow things to happen in the future. So, yes, there are ways in which things can be monetized ultimately. I don't know about. Ultimately, it may well come down to the fact that if we want to keep going and the project rolling, we're going to need year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and we need, let's say we have year 1 and 2 sorted. Ultimately, we need to sort year 3, 4, 5, etc. And these are questions that exactly how we do that as we go forwards. But let's start on these things sooner rather than later. Anything else?
Thank you.
Right.